Smart B Sports Update podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to OptimumCBD.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the Smart B Sports Update podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. I'm really depressed over the weekend because Robert Whittaker got demolished by Khamzat Chimaev and then Max Holloway got knocked out. So for the first time in, I think, ever. So every MMA fan in Australia was crying on Sunday at 8 a.m. because the card was on at 6 a.m. and 5 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, at least Australian rugby league fans weren't crying on Sunday afternoon, even if Australian UFC fans were crying in the morning.
I watched that too. That was pretty good. Did you watch the game?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I watched that one. I actually covered the Fiji Cook Islands one, but we'll get to that in a sec. Yeah, Australia 22-10 over New Zealand in Christchurch. Your mate Zach Lomax scored a double. I thought Australia were pretty good. New Zealand had a better completion rate, 86% to 79%. And well, what does that tell us? Well, I think it tells us Australia did a lot more with their opportunities, and I think it tells us that New Zealand's finishes to their sets were terrible. I don't think they got enough out of Charles Nickel-Clockstad at 5'8" or Sean Johnson at halfback.
Yeah, and, they were mentioning it in commentary. They took what was the guy's name from the Dolphins? Who was on the bench for New Zealand? I'm drawing a total blank. Terrible.
I'll look it up.
But he didn't come on until 10 minutes from the end. He's like the 5'8" for Dolphins or something.
On the bench for New Zealand?
Yeah.
So they had Neem, Nikorima, Nikore, Ricky.
Cody Nikorima, that's it. Like he was left on until like 10 minutes to go or something. And so, at one point in the match, I think the New Zealand had 70 tackles inside the Australia's 20, and Australia had only had like 19 inside New Zealand's 20. And it really showed. I don't know, like the whole thing around the first match as well, Australia versus Tonga, was Australia's defence was so good. They weren't that good with the ball. They had a whole bunch of errors, but their defence was really, really good. And you can go the other way and say Australia's defence was just too good for New Zealand. But I wasn't that entertaining of a game of football, I thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're going to get to Channel 9's commentary in a second, but I watched it on Fox, and I thought the commentators, I think it was Andrew Voss commentating, I'm pretty sure, and they just talked it up into something it wasn't. They kept saying how great, and I know commentators have to do that. I know that's part of their job. But that doesn't mean we have to agree with them. Yeah. I thought they kept going on about how great a game it was. I didn't think it was. I'm with you on that one. I thought it was a bit flat. I thought the first game against Tonga was a bit flat as well. I know Peter V'landys has made it a huge priority of his. I think this Pacific Championship and we've noticed there's been some changes this year to last year, and I think he's got his fingerprints all over that, Peter V'landys. I think he's trying to make this concept better himself. He's made it sort of his baby, I think. There is this feeling that we are all a little bit footied out by this time of year, and is this really necessary? I know it's great to try and grow the international game, but I certainly think if we're going to grow the game, certainly putting an NRL team in PNG, which looks like they're going to do that now, I think that's probably a better way of going about it than having these internationals at the end of the year. I know we've got to have a World Cup, I get that, but it's whether you need these. Do you really need this international tournament at the end of the season? I'm not so sure.
We want to watch international rugby league, but maybe there's just the season is too long. and so that makes the international like not as attractive. I think like the best thing about the game was the Zach Lomax versus Jermaine Osako battle. Like Zach Lomax stood up Jermaine Osako a couple of times, and then Osako had that beautiful like rope-a-dope on Zach Lomax. Just made him look like a fool. You know, I mean, Zach Lomax got the last laugh by getting more points and technically having a better game, but I think if you were like to play the highlight reels, Jermaine Osako's run around Zach Lomax for his try was really the highlight there. Like, he made him look like a fool.
Yeah, he did too. Yeah,
but that was like really the most intriguing thing in the match for me. The rest of it, the forward battle wasn't that exciting. The halves on both sides, I thought, were like Sean Johnson's kicking game was good, but if it doesn't convert, it doesn't mean anything. And I thought the halves on both sides were pretty like, you know, there wasn't anything interesting. It was just like standard NRL week in, week out type football from the halves. And then, I was just like, well, it's not that good. I don't know.
It just didn't look like New Zealand really had a plan of attack. It looked like they were just playing off the top of their head, hoping for the best. And, you've really got to do better than that against Australia. And I know they won that final last year 30-0, and I know that's where that will be the real test for Australia. This win will mean nothing for Australia if they don't win this tournament.
All it means is they definitely guarantee the final.
They're definitely in the final, yeah. But it did look like New Zealand were playing off the top of their head. And at least it does give us something to talk about this Pacific Championships at a time of year where you're in a bit of a lull period between the footy season ending and the Test cricket summer starting, so it does fill a bit of a gap in that regard. It does serve that purpose, but it probably suffers from the number of players who are missing from the tournament. A lot of players, making themselves unavailable, having surgery, or players like Nathan Cleary, Cameron Munster, these sorts of players. So I think that's probably an issue as well. If we were getting the full strength Australia and New Zealand teams, that would be one thing. But we're sort of getting an abbreviated version of that with the number of superstar players missing from the sides.
Yeah, like no Jerome Hughes, Dalian winner.
That's it.
For New Zealand. Sean Johnson had a good kicking game. He hadn't played in 8 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think the Warriors had the bye in the last round as well. So that so not only did he not play in the finals, well, the Warriors had the bye in the last round. So it's been a while since he played, and I guess it was probably hard for him because he was retiring. He probably sort of checked out mentally a little bit, and then at the last minute he gets the call up to come into that New Zealand side. I think that would be hard mentally to sort of go, I'm done, and then, oh no, I'm not done. All of a sudden New Zealand need me for this Pacific Championship. So that would be difficult in itself, I think. The coming out of retirement when you think you've played for the last time.
Yeah, and that's... I think it really spoke in the game with no converter. New Zealand got 2 tries, one each half. I think Australia's tries were a bit more exciting, like the Lindsay Collins line break.
Yeah, that was very impressive.
When a forward gets a line break, you just see the fear on his face, like, what do I do? Just keep
I'll tell you what, and Mitchell Moses, he got a try at the back end of the game as well. I'll tell you what, I'm really interested to see, while we're talking about rep football, this decision that New South Wales have got next year with the halfback spot. Now, it's not going to be an easy decision to make, that one. It's really not. I mean, you can make arguments both ways. Nathan Cleary, obviously, he's guided his team to the last 4 premierships in a row. And I know Nathan Cleary's been a part of New South Wales series wins previously, but he hasn't really owned Origin yet. He hasn't, and Mitchell Moses did this year. He did. So that's one thing Mitchell Moses has over Nathan Cleary. He's owned an Origin series. Nathan Cleary hasn't yet. But you got Nathan Cleary, who's the Tom Brady of the NRL with the 4 premierships in a row. And now you got Moses finding his feet for Australia. So I tell you what, they both start well next season. That's going to be very interesting discussions at the New South Wales selection table.
Because people will be like, "Why are you talking about Origin?" Because it's rugby league, and that's the most important thing. But
and it's rep football as well.
I think a lot will come down to how well Jerome Luai goes at the Tigers. You know, if Jerome Luai's not having the best year at the Tigers, I don't see. And who's the coach going to be anyway?
Of the Blues?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't know, do
so it'll be dependent a lot on the coach as well. Ricky Stewart's probably not going to want to do it. No one asked.
So are you saying in the sense that if Luai gets the gig, well, that plays in Cleary's favour because of the combination?
Yeah, I think so. Like just in the first game, I think they'd probably go that way. But if Luai's going really badly because he's at the Tigers and no one can make the Tigers good, and so they don't pick Luai, then it doesn't. You know, then you again you go back to equal footing. Well, who will best partner with whatever 5/8 we have to pick, or do you pick both? Can Mitchell Moses play 5/8? I don't know. Obviously, you wouldn't put Nathan Cleary at 5/8, and he would be the dominant playmaker in that pairing. But
so I think you might have nailed it there. I think.
Yeah.
I think there's your answer, really. I don't know how you leave those two players out. So you just pick Moses at 5/8 and Cleary at halfback.
You also got to remember Nathan Cleary tends to get injured in the middle of the year.
That's the thing. We are making the assumption that these players are both going to be fully fit.
Well, Nathan Cleary's always injured.
Moses has had his injury problems as well. Yeah. So
but he gets injured at the back end of the year. So after.
So the decision might be made for them here.
Yeah.
But, I guess if you do pick both of them, well, then you are picking a halfback out of position and you would be leaving Jerome Luai out. But, yeah, I think maybe you're right. I think maybe you go Moses 5/8, Cleary at halfback. But anyway, it'll be an interesting discussion next year.
So then there was also the who was it?
Fiji and Cook Islands. I actually covered this one. That was in Suva.
Yeah,
Michael Jennings got a hat-trick. Sammy Valame and Micah Sevo got doubles. 56-6. Fiji put the cleaners through Cook Islands there.
So, maybe they need to find another team.
Well, whoopsie, nearly knocked my water off the table. So this is the thing. I mean, there's a number of scenarios the way this bowl could play out. But PNG play Cook Islands on Sunday. You'd have to think if PNG have beaten Fiji and Fiji have hammered Cook Islands, well, PNG are going to beat Cook Islands. And obviously if PNG do beat Cook Islands, well, they'll play the loser of New Zealand and Tonga in that promotion relegation for next year's Pacific Championship. The winner of New Zealand and Tonga on Saturday will play Australia in the final the following week.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't realise that final on the 10th is the 4 finals. So if you go to CommBank Stadium...
Yeah, the 2 women's ones and the 2 men's ones. Yep.
The one after it starts at 11 in the morning or something and finishes at 8 p.m.
Yeah, so you got 4 games there on that Sunday.
CommBank Stadium's a really nice stadium as well, you know. So that's actually a really cool thing. And now I'm like, dude, I want tickets. I don't know if I can find somewhere to sit with me for 8 hours to watch football. But it's such a cool thing.
It's a long way to go out there too.
I live 10 minutes away.
Oh, yeah, not for you, yeah.
The Jillaroos beat New Zealand as well, so the Jillaroos are through to the finals for that Pacific Cup Championship thing as well. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything much else to discuss. That's. I think the Cook Islands is perhaps next year they might want to bring Samoa into it. I don't know, instead of the Cook Islands. No, the Cook Islands clearly aren't competitive enough at this point in time. The other 2 teams in that Championship Cup thingy, one of them is going to play Tonga, most likely, unless New Zealand lose this week, which would be hilarious.
You'd have to think if you had to go one way or another, you'd go New Zealand probably win, but you never know.
Just imagine. Tonga's beat New Zealand before.
Yeah,
you never know. So New Zealand would then be playing to stay in. Imagine they got relegated. But
That'd be a fall from grace. Winning the Pacific Championship in 2023 to being relegated in 2024. That
highly
would be,
unlikely.
That would be quite the fall from grace.
So, obviously, like maybe Samoa's playing in England right now, and they had a full dust up. By the way,
yeah, they did too.
All 26 players. No punches thrown, but it was a lot of grappling.
Nothing wrong with that. That's what the fans want to see, right?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that gets booed at the UFC. That's what happened when they're on the ground and everyone starts screaming, chanting, "Stand them up!" But yeah, like maybe they might want to think about bringing Samoa into it instead of the Cook Islands, because that'll be 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I know they seem to be trying to improve this with every year. We mentioned that sort of farcical scenario last year where New Zealand and Australia played against each other in a dead rubber, knowing that they were going to meet in the final a week later.
Yeah.
So it seems like they've tinkered with that this year. That they've avoided that scenario, and they've also added this promotion relegation game, which I think is a good step. But yeah, they're just not quite there yet with this. They're still trying to get it right, and I think you're right as well. I think that's another improvement that needs to be made. Cook Islands probably not up to the level of this tournament, and you'd think PNG will win that game comfortably this week.
The World Cup is 2026, so obviously 2025 they'll run another one of these. So maybe they can tweak it next year.
Yeah, so I guess that's the thinking. But build it up towards the World Cup. Try and get this right going into the World Cup.
And as you mentioned, the Channel 9. Like I watched on KO, so I don't know. I never watched Channel 9 if I can help it.
Why would you watch the ads if you don't have to?
Yeah, there's so many ads. But yeah, there's been a lot of criticism all year about the commentary on Channel 9 actually. And Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler's one I saw in the discussions on the internet during the game, like, just stop going to Brad Fittler, please.
Well, someone said it sounded like they were commentating a funeral at times. That's how unenthusiastic they were. Look, I would say that, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I mean, before I was criticising the Fox commentators for overdoing it, so I'm not going to criticise these two for not seeming too enthusiastic about a game that was pretty dull and lifeless in itself.
Maybe the game was just so boring they couldn't get excited.
That's the thing. You want your commentators to be honest with you, don't you? So, like, from that regard, I sort of go, well, I sort of defend those two in that regard. But that having been said, I get this, and again, I'm not this game, if they were a bit, lacklustre, well, I can forgive that because it was a lacklustre sort of game. But just in general, I think those two, they're maybe a bit guilty of just going through the motions a bit too much, a bit lazy with their commentary. It's Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler, they're huge names in the game. You sort of feel like they go, look, I don't have to prepare for this, I don't have to do my homework, I'm Andrew Johns or I'm Brad Fittler. You get that feeling from them, and you do. And while in this instance I don't really blame them, at times when I have flicked on the Channel 9 coverage throughout the season, I've sort of felt that about those two, that they don't do their homework, they go through the motions a bit, and they expect to just live off their name.
I think the internet love affair with Brad Fittler is especially over. There was a period of time where he was like, he's got a funny kind of, if you looked at the timeline as a graph, since he basically took over from the Roosters, where he became like universally loved by everyone and was the greatest coach in the history of the world, and then the world's worst club coach, the worst that ever existed and the worst that ever would be, and then the greatest state of origin coach in the history of the world, then the world's worst state of origin coach that ever existed and ever would be, and then the greatest commentator in the history of the world, and now he's like, maybe that guy just can't stay in a job for too long. Once he's in the job and people get to know, because since it's like I said all year, it's kind of been a thing with those two, but Brad Fittler especially, and then you've got the whole thing with the Fox sisters that rose up twice. If I had a penny for every time Brad Fittler did something awkward to the Fox sisters, I'd have 2 pennies. It's not a lot, but it's still weird that it's two.
Yeah, I thought if one thing goes a bit wrong on camera, I mean, we're on camera all the time, so we can sort of relate to that. But for him to go up to her after the grand final in the dressing room, I thought that was a bit strange.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
She sort of looked at him as if to go, "Are you really doing this? Are you really coming up to me again?"
There's guys out there that everybody actually constantly, like everybody on the internet, could constantly talk about how good they are, and I've said it before. I don't understand why NRL decision makers aren't scouring the internet for opinions. Obviously, the majority of opinions on the internet are negative, obviously.
But you can't ignore it completely, though, can you?
So what it kind of comes down to is people are tribal, right? And, the most extreme tribalism is topical, the American elections, right? So red till we're dead, what is it? Blue no matter what. Red till you're dead kind of things, and you can't pay any attention to those people who are extremes. But there's a lot of measured comments on the internet about certain things, especially when you go to like the Reddit, NRL Reddit, and I can't. There was a line dropout rule, I mentioned when I looked at the arguments about it, and I actually specifically asked people. We were going to be discussing it with Mitchell Pearce, I think it was. Can you give me like your thoughts? Nobody could argue. Nobody could steelman it. No one could give a positive spin on it. And even arguments will always happen, but the arguments always came from like typos and poor phrasing or misunderstandings rather than anyone saying like, no, actually guys, I think it's really good. And if you remember when, right at the very beginning of the year when Mitchell Pearce was on our podcast and we talked about the change the line dropout rule, he said at that time, I kind of like it because it like opens up something new in the game. But when he's on here next, I want to ask him because before he went to France, he was on another podcast, and they talked about it, and he said, actually, like, now I really hate it. So, as he progressed, he was the one person I ever met who thought it was good, and then even he has flipped to the other side now. And so you can go and look on the internet, look at kind of things like this, because people aren't sitting, when people on the internet during, and it's, so for the subreddit, NRL subreddit, the mods make a pre-game discussion thread, and then a during-game discussion thread and a post-game discussion thread. That's the official. That's where you can only go to talk about things. Pre-game discussion thread, there's a whole bunch of people saying, God, I hope Brad Fittler isn't on the commentary team. During the game, it's, man, I wish Brad Fittler would just shut up. Post the game, like, man, the worst thing about that game was Brad Fittler was terrible. Now, I like Brad Fittler. I was never one of the ones that, like, piled on him and stuff like that. And I thought the way New South Wales treated, we discussed it last year, New South Wales treated him was, like, bizarre and stuff, and I know he's all wacky and a vegan and does grassing or whatever it's called. Like he's one of those strange ducks on the internet. But when you have a consistent argument on the internet, a consistent point on the internet where nobody is arguing it, you should really pay attention when you're in a popularity game, And the other one for that actually also gets that is Cooper Cronk. A lot of people don't like Cooper Cronk. They use him as a copy-pasta joke, which is like when someone says something stupid and you just copy and paste it on other threads, because copy-pasta is like, if you want to appear stupid or you want to say something stupid, and there's so many copy-pastas for Cooper Cronk. And even people that I know that don't follow rugby league, or just tentatively follow or a little bit, make fun of Cooper Cronk and call him Cooper Copy-Pasta Cronk.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Cooper Cronk, I think there were times where I thought maybe he overcomplicated it a bit too much, his commentary, but to be fair, I think he is getting better. And to be honest, I think he's a much better commentator than Brad Fittler, that's for sure. I mean, the thing about Brad Fittler is, you're right, at the start when he commentated, the thing is he doesn't have a great voice for commentary, does he? He certainly doesn't have the voice of Ray Warren for commentary, Brad Fittler. But when he first started, he was sort of a bit quirky, a bit out of the box, and he'd get really enthusiastic, and people sort of warmed to that. But as you mentioned, the gloss seems to have gone off Brad Fittler. I mean, I think New South Wales were vindicated by letting him go as coach. He lost those 2 series in a row. Michael Maguire took over and won the series, so you can't question that decision from New South Wales in that regard. And then, we've had, as we said, those examples with the Fox sisters this year was just really awkward, and it hasn't really been a good 12 months for Brad Fittler. I wouldn't have thought this is the thing. I think Channel 9 have been guilty of just moving on commentators for no other reason than that they're too old and we need new commentators. Yeah. I'd rather hear Phil Gould and Paul Vaughton commentate than I would hear Brad Fittler or Paul Gallen commentate. Yeah. I really would. I think they're much better commentators, much more experienced.
They never really... It's such an old boys club. They never really get rid of people in these kind of media.
That's the thing. They just... I mean, Fatty and Phil Gould are still involved, but they might just...
Well, they're getting too old now.
Yeah, but they might just appear on the half-time show or the full-time show rather than in commentary. But I'd still rather listen to them during the game.
And that's so they just let them basically die off as they get old, rather than realising, actually, this isn't working and perhaps we need to bump them on.
Yeah, you can't just go, Paul Gallen, Brad Fittler and Andrew Johns are a lot younger than Fatty Vaughton and Phil Gould, so we're going to go with them. I mean, you still got to have the best person for the job.
Find someone who's actually good. And
if they're in their mid-60s and they're the best at it, well, they should keep going.
No bias or anything, but Mitchell Pearce has been on an NRL 360 all year and he's on Triple M, and he gets a lot of positive comments for his understanding of the game, especially attacking plays. And he discusses a lot like the tactics that they need to adjust. And there's a lot of the times where one of the things like when with Joe Rogan, because obviously I'm a UFC person, that a lot of people talk about why they like Joe Rogan's commentary is he tells you the move before it happens.
Yeah.
So he'll say he's digging for the underhook, and whoever's up against the cage needs to watch out for that outside leg coming in behind for an outside leg trip, and then the outside leg trip will happen.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've seen commented about Mitchell Pearce is during halftime discussions, he will often say, has said during the year, this is what X team needs to change when they come out of the change room, and they'll come out of the change room and that's what they've changed. And so that's what people kind of actually really want, that kind of insight into the game. That's what they want to see, instead of, just really lackluster, boring and awkward conversations with Olympic medalists. And the other one I've actually saw, there was a heap of really positive feedback about Craig Gower appearing on NRL 360.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. So it's good to see our two ambassadors both had made appearances on NRL 360 as well this season.
Yeah, they're copying us. But yeah, I don't know. The only time I've ever seen someone that was only a commentator for a short period of time was Ray Hadley. And, you don't know why Ray Hadley... I know why he was brought in, because everyone seems to love Ray Hadley. I don't know why he was booted. But there was a period of time when they had the two games on Friday night. And I know it was before they had them also live on Foxtel at the same time, And I know every single person anecdotally that I know wouldn't watch the second game if Ray Hadley was the commentator. They fully would it doesn't matter if it's my team or not. I'm just not going to watch it because I can't stand it. And because it was on delay.
I think what happened because he was so experienced with the radio, I think maybe he found it a bit difficult transitioning to TV. It's hard. He called on the radio for so long.
Yeah.
And obviously on the radio you got to be a lot more descriptive than you do on TV because people can see what's going on with the TV commentary. You don't need that play-by-play commentary. So I think maybe he found it really hard having called on the radio for so long to go to the TV, and then he's an experienced media performer, so he would know that the TV commentary is different. But when you're so used to calling it on the radio, transitioning to TV, it can't be easy, even for someone with his experience.
Yeah, he disappeared really quickly, and it was that was before there was massive conversations on the internet, but also so you don't know, it could have just been he went, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got that high rating radio show, the Monday to Friday. So, and I think he'd be fair. I don't know exactly how old he is. He'd be fair age now, Ray Hadley.
I think 108.
Yeah, he'd be in his 60s or 70s. I'm guessing. It'd be either one of those.
70 years old. Yeah.
70, yeah. So. He's probably at his age. He probably needs to cut back on his work commitments, I would say.
Then they stopped doing that second game on Friday anyway, the late one that was on delay. That was really demented and stupid. Obviously the ratings it was hard to watch a game at 9:30. That was like because they used to play the two games on Friday night at the same time.
Yeah, and then they replay one of them after the.
And it was like really hard to
one.
watch, not just because it was, but like.
At least that was even better. Remember, way back in the day, you'd only get one game and it'd come on at 8:30.
Yeah.
So it'd be on delay and you'd only get one game.
There was the period of time where Sunday was the there was a 1 hour delay, like the game would have to start at
4 o'clock.
At 4, and lead into the news.
And that was the problem. When the game was on delay, you think the ads are bad when the game's live. When the games are on delay, they can load up the ads.
It was. I remember one year, because I'm a mad City Country fan. I love City Country. It was always actually my favourite rep game. But there was one year where I turned it off because the 2 hour game was like almost 3 hours. You know, it was, the first 40 minutes, because it was on delay, and the first 40 minutes I was like an hour and 15 into it, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Because, but, I mean, you're not missing anything, unlike with the Channel 9, like when it's live, you actually do miss pieces of the game, they're walking back and stuff like that to kick off the ball. You know, they only play during breaks in play. But... And then you come back and there's like a gap in what the broadcast. But when it's on delay, there's no gap. But that makes it actually worse. Because I have to watch a minute of ads and then I've still got to watch them walking back to put the ball down. This is taking too long. Yeah. And over to Brisbane, and Michael Maguire is making his basically putting his stamp. He's let long-time trainer Alan Langer go, assistant coach Alan Langer go. Wally Lewis is obviously up in arms about it.
Yeah. The quote from Wally Lewis was, "I was shocked, effing stunned. Sacking Alf is like sacking Santa Claus." Well, they haven't won a premiership since 2006. So whatever they were doing previously has not worked for a long time. And so at some point you need to make changes. So that's what I don't understand here. Is there some rule that, just because someone was a great of the club, you have to keep them in a role like that even when the club's not performing on the field? I mean, isn't the priority here for the first grade team to get results or to win premierships? Isn't that the priority here?
You know, this the Broncos are starting to remind me of the Tigers, to be honest. And this
is the thing that it's not the same thing either. Like the Broncos have got, they're a one team town. They're a one team town. They've got a monopoly on Brisbane. It's the second biggest market in the game, really, when you think about it.
They're the most profitable club.
So.
The Tigers, we've talked about it. They've changed the coach, they've changed the team, they've changed the board, they've changed the CEO, they've changed the bloody everything. They've probably changed their paper supplier, and it's had no effect on them in the last however many years. The only thing they can't change is, you don't ever need to change your fans, but the only thing they can't change is those ex-players, and legends of their clubs, West Tigers, the clubs, constant criticism. We talked about it when, I can't remember who it was, wasn't invited to the game, and then the Bulldogs, I think, ended up inviting him. He had to go to the media and tell everyone. I can't remember who it was, but it was such a big thing. And the Broncos are starting to remind me of that. Every time anything happens at the Broncos, every ex-player legend is just piling on criticism constantly. Yeah. They never say anything good.
No, and
they have everything nice to say about Kevin Walters now that he's gone, and he's the best guy, and they shouldn't have sacked him, and
any former player, great player, gets looked after, gets defended under any circumstances, and yet they remain a club who haven't won a premiership since 2006. They can't keep living in the 1990s, the Broncos. They can't do it.
All those ex-players and legends of their club need to actually be quiet and just see what happens. And then, you shouldn't criticise people before things have happened. You got to criticise afterwards. And they can be critical all they want afterwards. I mean, it's still again, it's the Tigers. No matter what decision the Tigers make, ex-players will if it's a Balmain-related decision, all the ex-West Magpies guys will pile on and say it was the worst decision ever, right? And at this point, you'd have to say they're all justified because the Tigers can't do anything. But the Broncos are just making everything bad. Michael Maguire is now going to have to go into that room in a few days. He's going to have to address and work with all these players that have looked up to all these ex-players and they're their heroes. And all their ex-players and the current players' heroes They're saying like Michael Maguire is the worst thing ever. Everything Michael Maguire is doing is bad. They're setting a stage. They're setting them up for failure. And you know, age-old adage: we don't let the stuff off field affect us. But why is your team going so badly when there's stuff off the field?
Yeah, and I feel like these, you know, like your Wally Lewises and your Gordon Tallises, I feel like they're sort of talking down to Michael Maguire. It's sort of like because he only played 18 first grade games in his career. It's like, oh, if you haven't played 200 or 300 first grade games, then we can talk down to you because we're legends of the game. Why does he have to keep proving himself to these Broncos old boys? He's a well-credentialed coach. He's won 2 premierships. With Wigan in 2010, with Souths in 2014. Not only that, coached New Zealand to that Pacific Championship final win over Australia last year, coached New South Wales to that Origin Series win this year. This is a well-credentialed coach, and he seems to keep having to prove himself to these Broncos old boys all the time. Hello, you haven't won a premiership since 2006. You got to do something different now.
Well, you got to, like, the Broncos are now in that, like, severe danger of becoming that, you know, Souths, Dragons kind of teams that haven't won a competition for 30 years.
But that's the thing. Like, all right, the West Tigers are a basket case, but you'd expect it from them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect it from the Broncos.
But the Broncos continued, ex-players and stuff, continued behaviour like this will just I don't know, like I'm not a futurist or whatever, I can't see the future, can turn them into the Tigers, and then they're in danger of becoming that. Oh, they haven't won a premiership in 40 years. You know, they've been in danger of becoming that Parramatta that every single person that comes in, every single coach that comes in will never live up to Wayne Bennett. Like no one who comes into Parramatta lives up to Jack Gibson. Every single number 7 who comes in won't live up to Peter Sterling or, in this case, Alan Langer. You know, they're in danger of that. All they need to do is like take a breath and wait and see what happens. Like, what are they all going to come out and apologise? Of course not, but if Michael Maguire wins a premiership next year?
That's the thing. They're hitting him in October because they know that by March next year, if they start well, everyone will have forgotten about it. They're not hitting him in February because they know everyone will remember. They're hitting him in October.
He hasn't even started yet.
You know? That's the thing. And Paul Gallen said, you can't let a guy like Alfie Langer go. Again, it's this ex-player who's played hundreds of games, having a go at a guy who's only played 18 games and sort of talking down to a guy who's only played 18 games, even though, as I pointed out, he's a well-credentialed coach.
If it was so easy to coach, guys, go do it then. You know? Show us how you would do it better. Apply for the job. You know, if Wally Lewis wants to bag the coach and say the coach is making all the... Why didn't he apply for the job? Why didn't he say, like, I'll come and coach?
Yeah, and look, and Michael Maguire said that Alan Langer is still going to be involved in the club in some capacity. He's not shafting him completely. He's just rejigging things a bit.
Yeah, well,
that's
he's got to be able to bring in his staff.
Of course. If Alan Langer's influence over the team was so great, well, why haven't they won a premiership for 18 years?
What? Yeah, exactly. He's like Kamala Harris, you know?
Can we have a little discussion on the US election next week, the day before the election?
Oh, it is the day before the election. Yeah, I'm so pumped for it's going to be on the television.
I'm just thinking, can we put it in our other sports next week and have 5 minutes on it?
There's betting markets on it.
Yeah. Let's do it next week.
I fully listened to that whole Donald Trump, Joe Rogan podcast.
Did you? Is it worth?
It's 3 hours.
Oh no, that's the thing. I sort of looked at the 3 hours and went, oh, so long.
Well, it took me 3 days to listen to it in the car to and from.
Yeah,
you know, that's the thing. Like I listened to it in the car. I listened to Lex Friedman and Donald Trump and Theo Von and Donald Trump as well. But they're only an hour, and so when they announced that he was going to be on Joe Rogan, whose average podcast time is 3 hours, everyone on the internet was like, Joe Rogan will never get him to do 3 hours. They did 3 hours.
So, why so long?
It's just a full conversation they have.
Yeah,
because
right.
the Joe Rogan podcasts are like now just he goes on these rants about COVID and aliens and who's on. So we're here to talk about simulation theory. What do you think of COVID? You know, like so.
But what I don't get is, I know we're going a little bit off script here, but I sort of don't get how Joe Rogan kept saying, oh no, I'm not getting him on, I don't want to help him, and then all of a sudden he gets him on just before the election.
He just changed his mind.
And he said, oh, since he got shot at that rally, I had to get you on, and now...
He just changed his mind. Because people, we are off topic, but people will criticise that, and then you can go look at, they actually talk about it on that Joe Rogan podcast, and also The View responded. You know the TV show The View with Whoopi Goldberg? And
Yeah.
Fucking, pardon my French, terrible show. Oh my God.
It's not great, is it?
But Donald Trump was on there, and they all loved him. Like, he was on The View, and they all loved him. He was on a whole bunch of...
Was that before he
2000,
became...
I think it was 2011 he was
So
on
that was before everyone started hating him.
But that was when he first started talking about running for president.
Yeah, so everyone didn't hate him at that time.
Criticising Barack Obama. But they all loved him. They talking about, they introduced him as our friend Donald Trump, and they give him hugs and kisses and stuff like that. And now they celebrate whether that he got shot at. And so people will criticise Joe Rogan for changing his mind, but then they'll accept the fact that the View changed their mind. And then The View released a response to this whole thing and said, no, Whoopi Goldberg never loved him. And here you can see her facial expression. Here's a carefully edited cut of how she hated him even during that episode.
I'm just surprised it took Joe Rogan so long to get on the Trump train, because I think a lot of his...
He's not ready, man.
A lot of his listeners would be Trump supporters.
No, that's like just another left-wing conspiracy nonsense thing. Spotify released the thing. It's very even. Like, he gets listened to by so many... He gets listened to by so many people. It's not possible for them to be majority either way. So once you get to that many people, it's really split down the middle. I'm not a Trump supporter, and I listen to Joe Rogan. Nobody I know actually, except for my son, my oldest son, who's a weirdo, is a Trump supporter. But everybody I know listens to Joe Rogan. This is the thing. He just took him so long to get him on because he didn't want to have him on.
It's just as I was sort of just thinking about that. I think Joe Rogan's involved with the UFC, so is there that Trump loves the UFC?
Dana White, and that's getting back onto sport. The UFC couldn't get into New York years ago. New York wouldn't allow, the fighting commission wouldn't allow the UFC because it was too violent. And Donald Trump, because he's actually a New York-based businessman. He was the one that was able to get the UFC license to go to New York, but then Dana White and the UFC couldn't get a venue for New York. Madison Square Garden and stuff wouldn't accept him, so Donald Trump gave them a venue. And then since then, that's 20 years ago, man. Since then, Dana White and Donald Trump have been really good friends. See, Dana White is a mad right-wing nut job.
He's a Trump supporter.
But Joe Rogan also has, in the last election, he had Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, who now everyone thinks is a Russian agent because of Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders, the most left-wing guy in the universe. But he doesn't... And in the last election, everyone goes on about how he voted for Trump, but he voted for George Georgeson, who's a libertarian, but also right-wing, but I think he's libertarian, but... so it's a bit weird. Anyway, that was off topic. But continuing on with the Broncos, and we will talk about the election next week. I'm so pumped for it.
I think we all are.
Billy Walters, Billy Walters, he plays for the Broncos, right?
Yeah.
So he's obviously he's old, but he has come out and said that he was in complete disbelief that his dad was sacked from the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, he acknowledges that he's biased because he's his son, which is fair enough. He says, but I don't think Kevy was the reason why they had a poor 2024 campaign. And look, I know it's his son defending his dad, I get that. But, I mean, alright, if you're going to say that about 2024, what about 2021 and 2022 when they didn't make the finals? Did he have nothing to do with that either? Did he have nothing to do with them missing the 8 in 21 and 22 as well? And then you can't have it both ways. You can't say, what a great job he did in 2023 when they made the grand final, and also say that, it had nothing to do with him when they missed the finals in 3 out of his 4 seasons of being the coach.
It's been widely established that him missing the finals wasn't the reason that he actually ended up getting sacked. There's a post-season review blow-up that got him sacked. He made the position untenable by basically saying he's not going to work with the back office. Anyway, so yeah, we can't blame him for them missing the finals, even though we actually have to blame him for them missing the finals. The only time you can't blame a coach for the club missing the finals is if the coach is the coach of the West Tigers. Okay? Because it doesn't matter who you put in there, they miss the finals. But at every other club, every single other club, it's mainly the coach's fault. The coach has two jobs: to build the team, build and train the team, and to make sure the team is up on game day to win. With the talent that the Broncos have, Kevin Walters failed in his second job. He built a team, he built a very talented team, but he wasn't able to get them up on enough game days to get into the finals.
No.
That's it. So it's his fault.
The buck stops with the coach. There are things that the coach can't control. Yes, of course, like injuries. But the coach lives or dies by the results. That's the way it rolls in this game. And if you've got a star-studded roster and you finish 12th as they did this year, and that's the thing, people go, they made the grand final in 2023. Yeah, they did, but as I pointed out, he missed the finals the 2 previous years as well. So you got to look at the whole picture. The 4 years, 3 of them missing the finals with a really good side. This is the issue here. And this is the thing. If you never blame the coach for anything, well, why have a coach? Why have the coach at all? If it's never the coach's fault, and it's always the players' fault, because the players are we always hear that, the players are the ones out there making the tackles or not making the tackles. Yeah. All right, well, if a coach doesn't mean anything to the result, well, don't have a coach then. Just have the players if the coach doesn't mean anything.
So the players organise their own training and run around.
Yeah, coaches should never be sacked then if it's always the players' fault.
The coach's only job is actually to send a text message to let everyone know what time everyone else is coming to, or to create the WhatsApp group for everyone.
Yeah.
And then somebody else go, boys, what time are you coming to training tomorrow? And then they can all make their own decisions.
Yeah.
I'll be there at 12. I'll be there at 11. What are you going to do tomorrow? I might just chill out and have a rest day. That's the coach's job. Schedule and structure training to make the team good enough to get them up on game day. That's their job. And, most of the year this year, Kevin Walters wasn't able to do that for the Broncos. With their quality roster, as I said, the only team that you don't blame the coach for not making the finals is the West Tigers. Because at this point we have to establish, everybody knows anything about rugby league, and even those who don't have to agree that it's not the coach's fault. And I think if Michael Maguire gets the Broncos to the finals, it once again is another nail in the coffin of it's not the coach's fault at West Tigers.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter who the coach is.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Walters, I guess he'll be concerned now because his safety net's not there. The safety net of being the son of the coach is not there now. So he's going to have to prove himself to Michael Maguire. And this is the thing, will he get a gig at another club? This is the issue.
I don't know.
It makes it harder when your dad's not the coach anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't actually know. I don't know if he's good or not. I know he's no Kyle Flanagan. Segway!
Kyle Flanagan, he does have the safety net, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's the one that we it's widely agreed that we got to give him credit where credit due. He had his best year this year that he's ever had in rugby league. But simple fact is, if Shane Flanagan's not his coach, he gets sacked and move on to a different club.
Yeah, and he wouldn't have got that contract at the Dragons if his dad wasn't the coach.
Exactly.
He was on the outer. He didn't perform. The Roosters let him go to the Bulldogs because they weren't happy with him.
Bulldogs,
the Bulldogs, even as much as they were struggling badly when they let him go, even they didn't want him in the state they were in last year. And so there's no way he would have got that gig if his dad wasn't the coach.
Exactly. But Billy Walters, I don't think is that. But meanwhile, over at the Dragons,
yes.
So we all, everybody in the world, thanks to the media, knows that at the end of year review for Ben Hunt specifically, he met with Shane Flanagan and assistant coach Dean Young, and they had a big blow up where they discussed how bad Ben Hunt is and how he's not playing to the value of his money and all this kind of thing, and how basically the coaches gave it to him and he was unhappy with the way he was treated and how he was disrespected. And then a couple of days ago, Shane Flanagan's been asked about that. And he said, well, there were 3 people in the room. I didn't say anything to anyone. I know Dean didn't. I'm not saying Ben did, but there were 3 people in the room. So he tiptoes around the direct accusation. But,
yeah, I mean, I've got the direct quotes here. I can read them to you. So Flanagan says this. He says, let me be really clear on the review bit and what was said in the review. There were 3 people in the review, me, Dean Young and Ben. I can guarantee you Dean Young didn't speak to any media, and I haven't spoken to any media about the review. And I'm just not quoting him now, but not only did he talk about that, it must have been Ben Hunt who leaked this information, but he also said that the information he leaked was inaccurate. He goes on to say, and what's being said is incorrect. There was no discussion about Ben's salary and all that sort of stuff. That's just absolutely rubbish. So it sounds like Ben Hunt's been shopped around. No one wants him. I think it ends up like, and Flanagan said, look, we expect him to be here. He's expecting him to be there. He's got another year to run on his contract. I think Ben Hunt's going to have to end up serving out the rest of his contract because he's not going to get anywhere near that money anywhere else. And other clubs have gone cold on him. They're not interested because they're not interested in paying huge money for someone who doesn't deliver results.
No, I think there's... it could have been that, again, like we talked about it before many times, it could be the agent who leaked this kind of information.
But, I mean, he would have had to tell his agent what happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, even then, maybe not. Well, maybe he went to the agent and said, they hammered me in the review, and then the agent went out to the media with some semi-made-up context, But these kind of ongoing dramas around Ben Hunt, plus his hefty price tag, are really making it look like no other club wants him. And the Dragons aren't willing to foot part of his contract. Actually, they're just not. If they have to pay for his contract, they expect him to play. And so we've had all these discussions about how he's probably going to go to the Titans or the Dolphins and all that kind of thing, but he's digging a deeper hole for himself, whether it's him or his agent or his girlfriend's cousin or whatever, giving him this advice to badmouth Kyle Flanagan, to release false information or possibly false information about the review. These are not the kind of things that give you a good reference to go to your next club. Other clubs, coaches, managers are looking at him going, I don't want this guy. He's a diva. He costs way too much. He
doesn't get results.
Doesn't get results. Dragons aren't willing to pay part of his salary. It's time to retire Ben Hunt.
But yeah, I'll tell you what, I think he'd be glad that he's in Kangaroos camp and not in Dragons camp. Yeah. Not going to be in Dragons pre-season camp until January. Once he gets out of this Pacific Championship setup and goes and has his break, he's not returning to the Dragons until January. Yeah, I think this is a case of, Flanagan's sort of looking at it going, we don't have a better option, so he's under contract next year. We may as well use him next year and then let him go after that when he's no longer under contract.
And if he's out of form, we'll drop him to reserve grade. That's what it's going to come down to. But there's no halves, so I don't know what the Dragons are going to do without him. There's no one in their team.
I think the only way he'd stay after his contract would be at a significantly reduced price. They'd say to him, he's on a reported $950,000 a year under this contract, so they might go to him and say, you can stay, but we're only giving you $500, and he'll probably tell them where to go, and he'll go somewhere else if he can find another club.
Head over to Super League or something.
Yeah.
I just it's kind of untenable. You can't. This is a public game, and this guy's in the media bagging the club, the coach, the player.
Well, he hasn't been a good investment for the Dragons because he's not had enough of an influence on the results. Since he's been at the club, they haven't had good results, and he's the key playmaker. So that rests on his shoulders, and it doesn't reflect well on him as a playmaker that he doesn't have the influence on the results.
The players that are on the way out of the Dragons are all being a bit dickish. Like Zach Lomax said, he took a swipe at Shane Flanagan when he said, I think Mal Meninga was the best coach he'd ever had. But that's what happened at the Bulldogs.
Yeah, so Shane Flanagan's going through exactly the same process as Cameron Ciraldo did at the Bulldogs. He's cleaning out the players he doesn't want to be there so he can get in players who are going to send them marching up the ladder.
Yep.
So I'd be pretty pleased with that if I was you. Yeah. He's just going through the same process as Cameron Ciraldo.
That's what,
it might take him a little bit longer than Ciraldo, but he's getting there.
You know, we talked about it all the way through the year where the thing I saw in the Dragons was like they were all happy to be there. They were all enthusiastic about their games. Last few games of the year, Ben Hunt, out of everyone, looked like he went back to the pre-thing. And that was a big letdown for the Dragons because he had 3 shocking games and made us miss the 8. Like, he was a turnstile in defence. It wasn't chasing. He looked like Latrell Mitchell, you know? And so, basically, we're happy to see the back of him at this point. Most fans are. Zach Lomax was well-loved and one of the best players of the year. At least he continued to try all 3 because he's such a competitor. But if he doesn't want to be on board, just get out. You know? That's the thing. Just get out. That's what they need to do. They need to do the Bulldogs. Just, all right, you 8 guys want to send a text message around saying blah, 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 whinge. You 8 guys go find other different things. You want to have, what was his name? Raymond Fatula Marin is now a Dragon. Go and complain to the coach and say, you're driving us too hard. Well, that's the way it is. You can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is how it is here. We don't change here to suit you. You change you to suit here. If this isn't the kind of environment you want to be in, plenty of other clubs who can be all soft and
this is the thing, as a fan, after a while you work out the players who aren't delivering for you. The fans are not stupid. The clubs are not stupid. After a while they go, look, you haven't delivered for us for a long time now, so we're happy to see the back of you. You know, look at someone like Tavita Pangai Jr. at the Bulldogs. He just wouldn't name up week after week, you know. I'm not saying that Ben Hunt is Tavita Pangai Jr., but, you know...
I don't think Ben Hunt should go boxing.
Yeah. But it's that same sort of concept. After a while, the fans look at certain players and go, well, you've been a key player for a while for us. You haven't delivered consistently. You're not having an impact on the result. And the fans' patience wears thin. And I think we're seeing that with Ben Hunt at the moment. It seems to me like, you know, personally, I think the Dragons are probably better off just letting him go now. But, I mean, they'll probably just keep him for one more year.
It's way too much money, I think. I don't think the Dragons have the money to do that. It's for him, specifically. It's just way too much money.
Excuse me.
So that's why they need someone else to take him. They need someone else to sign him so they can get that club to take him for this year for the salary cap.
So if he's on $950, how much do you need another club to chip in for it to
probably
be...
like $400, $450 they'd probably go. Yeah.
And pay the other $500 or $550.
Yeah. Over to your Dogs.
Yes.
Adokar's out the door. In two more days we'll find out where he's going.
Yeah.
The beauty of this is he's been given a show cause notice to front the board.
It's a drawn out process, isn't it? I would have thought it's
that one because we discussed before about waiting to the 1st of November. He's already been given permission to seek other clubs.
He can't find another club at the moment.
We were talking about it before, waiting till the 1st of November so he could sign with another club, and then they let him go early. But this show cause notice is just a straight and out sacking. That's what they're basically going to do. I think they're just going to sack him on, behavioural grounds, so they don't have to pay any money in the salary cap.
Okay, so is it so they're doing it this way because if they do it this way, they get that money back in the salary cap straight away?
I think so. That's my understanding.
Okay,
that's what I was told. They're now basically giving him 3 written warnings so they can fire him. I mean, it's in a normal job, you get 3 written warnings, and there's a lot of myth about the 3 written warnings and stuff like that. But you actually have to, when you have a normal job, you have to show that you've disciplined the person, told them what they've done wrong and stuff like that. And that's what the Bulldogs are now doing. Possibly because, even though no club would ever negotiate with a player or an agent before the 1st November deadline, possibly they've heard from everyone, we actually won't take him.
That's the thing. Maybe they wanted to give him a chance to find somewhere else first, and then, seeing as that hasn't eventuated, now they're going to go down this path where the money they can sack him, and that reported $550,000 salary that he's on will now be freed up to spend on other players.
Because I think for disciplinary reasons and bringing the game into disrepute, like Todd Carney or whatever, Josh Dugan didn't count towards the cap when he got sacked. you know, 'cause the doofus was off driving to his property in COVID lockdowns, and that was like the 48th misdemeanor of that year because he's Josh Dugan, and yeah, like then he tried to sue the Sharks to get his money back and was told no, and then he didn't count towards the salary cap because he had just had so many, you know, even though the integrity unit the NRL hasn't sacked him. The club can apparently, I don't know 100% know, this is hearsay, I've heard it from somebody else. The club can go to the NRL and say, we're actually sacking him basically for bringing the game into dispute for integrity reasons, blah, 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 blah. And if the NRL approves, then they get their salary cap money back. So yeah, like that just smells of all the other clubs ended up going, no. And that tells me that the stuff I heard last week or the week before about probably the Dragons actually taking Clint Gutherson. They were originally fully all in for Josh Adokar, you know, all in. And then Gutherson came up on the market, and I think it really tells you that the Dragons have been the last ones to basically, again, not that the clubs or agents would ever negotiate before 1st of November. We do have to stress that because it's never happened before. But the Dragons have probably like slid a note under the door of the Bulldogs hotel room, Aaron Warburton or Phil Gould's hotel room, and said, Dragons are out for Josh Adokar. We're going for Clint Gutherson. And so the Bulldogs are now, oh crap, we've got no one to take him. We'll just sack him completely. Because then another club can pick him up. And then it's all salary cap for them. Because as we discussed, basically our guess was it was going to be signs with another club for 2026. The Bulldogs offer him early if they cover some of his cap this year. Probably they know he's going to go nowhere, so now they're like, well, you're out, so a new club will have to pick up the whole bill.
Yeah, I guess maybe the Dragons did the old, you know, put out there that we're interested in Adokar to disguise the fact that we're really interested in Clint Gutherson, which is a tactic used by clubs a lot of the time. Yeah. Hide who you're really interested in. What's interesting, though, is how this compares to Ezra Mam. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for the Broncos not to sack Ezra Mam if the Bulldogs sack Josh Adokar, given that Josh Adokar, his offence was a lot less serious than Ezra Mam. Yes, he had that positive roadside drug test, but Josh Adokar didn't end up driving on the other side of the road. Josh Adokar wasn't unlicensed. Josh Adokar didn't end up crashing into another car and injuring a young girl and that girl suffering a broken hip. So Ezra Mam's offence was far worse, and I don't see how, if the Bulldogs are going to sack Josh Adokar, how the hell Ezra Mam can survive at the Broncos.
Well, Michael Maguire and I can't remember who the CEO or the board, whoever it was in the press conference, basically they did the refuse to rule out sacking Ezra Mam when they did a press conference about him. So I think Ezra Mam's going to get sacked just as soon as those charges come down.
Tell you what, if he goes to jail, it's going to be hard for the Broncos to keep him.
I think as soon as the charges come down, they'll let him go. It's the same as Paul Kent, you know. Once the charges came down, out you go.
Is it because it's easier for an organisation to then do it? The process is so much easier once the charges are low.
Because the innocent is, you know, we all have the innocent until proven guilty, right? Depending on the charge and how severe it is and how bad it is, it gives you more grounds. So I think we talked about it last time. If it was over 11 years, you'd get no fault stood down by the NRL anyway, if the charge was a potential over 14 years, and then the club has the right to either retain them on their salary cap retain them and pay them outside the salary cap, or let them go. If it's a lesser charge, he won't have a no fault stand down, so they can let him go and another club can pick him up. I'd say no other club would take Ezra Mam though. Josh Adokar, I think someone will take him next year on a reduced rate.
Yeah. You take him at the right price, and you're not going to give him $550, but you'd take him for $200,000.
Yeah, and you know it'll be like, you know, the Roosters need a back.
Someone will take a gamble.
I would not be surprised if he went to the Roosters. Honestly, like they've got a history of poaching Dogs players. They're the best.
Tell me about it.
They're the best attacking team in the competition, and Josh Adokar is one of the best. Although he's older, one of the best attacking finishers in the NRL. The Roosters lost Suoli'i and Joey Manu. So two representative, Suoli'i's a representative, two representative backs. So they have a gap there that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
You know?
A representative, but not for long because he got sent off 7 minutes into the game. But yeah,
technically, right? Hey man, Dean Young played State of Origin for 12 minutes. State of Origin player Dean Young. It's like how I'm I'm sometimes a medalist in competitions. There was only 2 guys in my division and I lost. But I'm still a medalist. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, like if the Roosters would be shipping around, but I wouldn't be surprised if he went to the Roosters. Another club that I think I wouldn't be surprised him going to is the Tigers.
yeah, no doubt. So somebody will pick him up at a lower price. Like somebody will take a gamble. And they might even offer him just a 1-year deal. I mean, and at least then if it doesn't work out, well, it's only a 1-year deal, so
that's what
it doesn't dent your salary cap for too long.
$200,000 to $300,000 1-year deal, but somewhere like the Roosters.
Yeah, someone will pick him up.
We'll see on Friday. Friday's the 1st of November. We'll see on Friday a lot of movement. 1/3 of the players, 1/3 of the NRL, he's available to test.
Well, we're going to have a lot to talk about next week, I think.
Yeah, like available to negotiate on the 1st. And that can be for 2026. That is like 1/3 of the NRL is off contract at the end of 2025. So a lot of stuff is going to go on. Because remember, the clubs the player is at can re-sign them now. Right? And they haven't. So 1/3 of the NRL hasn't been re-signed by their club. So that's 1/3 of the NRL who is going to be going to other clubs. There's going to be package deals done by agents. There's going to be like whole back line replacements, things like that, for sure. You're going to see
It's an interesting time. Yeah, the silly season's about to start.
I think it's the most players ever off contract at the same time.
We'll have a lot of signing news next week, I'd say.
Ryan Pappenhausen is one of the players that is off contract next year.
Yes, and it could be in the sights of the Bulldogs, perhaps.
Yeah, and, there's the suggestion that he could command as much as $1.1 million by going to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, well, if they free up that $550,000 from Addo Carr, well, they might be in line to make a play for him.
And that's not a bad buy. You know, they still don't have a half, the Bulldogs, but every club needs a superstar fullback, and you know what the Bulldogs don't have? A superstar fullback.
Yeah. I mean, they do need a half, they do, but they also need the right half, and they don't want to go off too early and sign the wrong one. So, yes, they need a half, but they also need the right one, and they need to be patient on that front. Pappenhausen's on $950,000 at the Storm. Now, they've only offered him $750,000 to stay. His deal ends in 2025. Again, as you say, he's one of those players who's waiting for November 1, and then on November 1, he'll be free to go to other clubs for 2026. So, you know, you can't really blame the Storm here. I mean, he is very injury prone. So, I mean, this is why the Storm are where they are, the powerhouse club they are. They set their price for players and they stick to it. They don't go over. They don't pay overs for players. That's why they are where they are. You can't blame them. It's just smart salary cap management.
Well, there's one thing they know how to do. It's how to value players. Probably better than any other club because they used to overvalue all players.
Look at the club who overpays for players, and look what the West Tigers. Look where they are.
Well, the Melbourne Storm used to overpay every single.
They did too. Yeah, at least they're playing by the rules now, right?
So they know how to value. Well, they always knew how to value players on the main set of books. You know, it was the extra set of books that were.
Let's just hope now they only have one set of books.
And as you said, they don't negotiate with anyone. Like they make you the offer. If you don't want it, you don't want it. You don't get it, and then they go find someone else who can fill your exact role, usually for less money than they offered you. You know, that's the Storm. That's the best clubs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is how good they are, and now. You know, they've always got a backup plan in place. I mean, they've got Sua Farlongo there, who's a fullback option as well. So this is the thing. That they set their amount for a player. They don't go over it. And they've always got a backup option in place if that player decides not to take the offer and leave. Very smart operation that they run down there, even though no one cares about the game down there. So apparently Billy Slater's been acting as a mentor for Ryan Papenhuyzen. It's even gone as far as Papenhuyzen stayed with Slater's family. Slater's been really good to him, looked after him. And so there's a feeling there that, well, if he jumps ship and leaves, well, is that going to get Billy Slater's nose out of joint a bit, given that he's looked after him? But I mean, that's just footy, isn't it? I mean, that's the salary cap. You know, they've made him an offer. If he can get a lot more money somewhere else, well, he's going to go somewhere else. That's just the NRL in 2024.
Exactly. I don't think he'd care. You can try and make a home and away style drama out of it, news media, but I don't think, like, Billy Slater's been through hundreds of teammates in his years. He was only at Melbourne, right? Yeah, only at Melbourne. So, and, you know, he was one of the ones that famously, like, was fully rejected by every team in Queensland, and then drove down to Melbourne to try out. So I think he just totally understands that's footy. Sometimes it's a mistake, sometimes it's not. I don't think he'd care, to be honest. But that's it for rugby league.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot to talk about next week, given, you know, a lot of clubs will suddenly be able to enter into quick negotiations and sign a bunch of players on Friday at 12:01
Yeah,
a.m.
some very quick negotiations are going to be made.
There's going to be the Fisher Harris style ones. On to cricket, because it's the summer of cricket. Australia's still suffering from opening batsman woes. And Dave Warner has offered to come back for the India Test series now officially. I think, well, all the Indian fans that I know are laughing at us about this, by the way. Just so you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've got problems of their own, losing that, we'll get to that in a bit, but losing that Test series to New Zealand on home soil, so they've got all sorts of problems at the moment, India, but then again, Australia have their problems as well here. I
think there's a little bit of psychological back and forth going here, where India is going, oh, yours is so bad, you have to resort to getting old, retired, out of form player back to fix your problems, and then we can reply and say, dude, you just lost to New Zealand on home soil.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Cummins has poured cold water on this idea of Dave Warner returning. He says, here's some quotes from Pat Cummins here. He says, I did speak to Dave a couple of days ago. I can't remember if he reached out or I did. Yeah, I don't believe that. How do you not remember from a couple of days ago who reached out? If it was you, you'd know who made the call, you or the other person. So I'm not believing that for a moment.
That's a bit of a weak statement.
Yeah, and he said that Warner asked him, well, what do you think? And then Cummins said, yeah, good luck with the Thunder, and I look forward to your comments on Fox. And then he went on to say, I think the truth's somewhere in the middle. I reckon the offer is a bit of a wind-up, but I reckon he doesn't mind seeing himself on the back page. We love Davey, but he's retired. I don't get that he's retired. Yeah, but he can come out of retirement, though. And if he makes himself available, well, you've got to consider him. And if he's your best option, well, you got to pick him.
Didn't he retire this year?
That's the thing. You can't just say, oh, he's retired. I mean, they wouldn't be saying that about Shane Warne, would they? When Shane Warne retired and there was talk of a comeback, everyone loved the idea of that. No one was saying, oh, he's retired, we don't want to see it. Everyone was saying, we want to see this happen.
Not like he retired 5 years ago. He played in January. It'd just be like coming back from a long-term injury, or a 10-month injury. They start in less than a month.
That's the thing. There's 2 Sheffield Shield games, and I did do an article about this on our website. There's 2 Sheffield Shield games coming up. Now, my argument in that article was because nobody's putting their hand up, that if he were to come out of retirement and go well in those 2 Sheffield Shield games before the first test, well, you've got to have a look at him. And I know, and somebody wrote an article saying, oh, we don't want to see David Warner come back because he's not Shane Warne. And I thought, well, why does that matter? If he's in the best 11 available, and if you've got the best chance of winning the series with him in the team, well, then he should be picked.
Oh, we don't want to see him come back because he's no Don Bradman. And he's also not Steve
This is the
Smith.
thing. There was a pile-on from these journalists. They all came out and hammered the idea that Daniel Brettig from The Age, Gerard Whateley from SEN, Peter Layla, the former News Corp journalist, they all piled on and had a go at him. But as I said in the article, In the Sheffield Shield round just completed, these were the scores from some of the contenders. Marcus Harris for Victoria made 26 and 16 against New South Wales. Sam Constas made 2 and 43. Look, 43 is not bad, but when you put 2 with it, it's not so great. That's 22.5 average for the game.
Less than the... That's less than...
Well, if you put it with the 2, he's averaging 22.5 for the game, so that's not much chop. Nick Maddinson, his partner, Constas' partner for New South Wales, 19 and 15. We look at other contenders. Matt Renshaw for Queensland made 2 and 21. Cameron Bancroft made 8 and 2 for Western Australia against Tasmania. And not only are these players struggling for form at the moment, but they're unproven at test level. Harris averages just 25 in tests. Maddinson, 6.75 in tests. That's Glenn McGrath's batting average in test cricket. Renshaw, 29. Bancroft, 26. These are the test averages for these batsmen. Sam Constas hasn't played a test yet. Compare that to Warner. He averages 44 in tests and has 26 test centuries.
Yeah, like if he wants to play, they should pick him. Because like I said, he only retired 10 months ago.
This is the thing. I mean, we don't know if he's in form or not, but we do know that he's proven in test cricket. Yeah. The other contenders are both unproven in test cricket and out of form. So at least David Warner is proven in test cricket.
He wasn't in the best form when he retired, but he's also had a 10-month break, and he could... they play a lot of cricket. With T20, ODIs, internationals, the domestic competitions, all that kind of stuff. And, a 10-month rest might be just what he needed, and he could come out and smash 50, but he's still got a better chance of doing that than anyone that is currently available. So if he actually wants to do it, they should let him do it. Let him play a couple of Sheffield Shield games.
Well, I mean, we need to see that he's in form first, but if he plays in those 2 Shield games and he outperforms the other contenders, well, he should be picked.
Straight away in, yeah.
They've got to give themselves their best chance of winning that series. They've lost the last 2 series against India out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also, Cricket Australia has announced a lifting of his leadership ban. It's a weird thing to...
Well, it's weird in the sense that, I mean, he's retired from international cricket now.
Now that you're retired, you can lead the team again.
Yeah, it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? It's a bit wishy-washy. But it does clear the path for him to captain Sydney Thunder in the Big Bash, and it also... The other thing is it gives him the opportunity to take on off-field leadership roles in future as well. So it's not entirely meaningless, but there is a feeling of tokenism with it in the sense that, will you wait till he's retired from international cricket and then lift the leadership ban? There is a bit of a non-story feel to this, I'd have to say. And I mean, that's the thing, they've backtracked. I mean, a lifetime ban's a lifetime ban. They've backtracked on their ban. I mean... I don't care that they have. I think a lifetime ban was too harsh, but if you're going to put the ban in place, well, you stick to your word.
One of my friends, when he was a kid, got a lifetime supply of Mars Bar ice creams as a payment for appearing in a Mars Bar ice cream ad.
Oh, right.
But it was 1 box of Mars Bar ice creams a month for 20 years. So it wasn't really lifetime. Are they saying that you're going to die when you're 30 years old?
The lesson here is lifetime bans are never really lifetime bans.
I thought that, like, my immediate joke was they just told you the date of your death.
Of course, that lifetime ban, of course, came as a result of that Sandpaper Gate scandal in 2018 in Cape Town.
Dave Warner got all of the blame for because he didn't cry. And our beloved Kane Corns, noted cricketer, has weighed in on the... Well, he's got things to say because there's nothing happening in AFL. There's the AFL women's competition, but it's really hard to report on because apparently the quality is so poor that they can't even do. I think I read one thing where it was like 5 games in the opening 3 rounds in which one team didn't score a goal.
This is the thing, if we're comparing the NRLW to the AFLW, I think the NRLW is a lot better to watch. Yeah, and I think that's a fair comment. I think that you watch a game of NRL women's and you go, that wasn't bad. That wasn't a bad game. But you watch the AFL women and you go, the gap between them and the men is just huge.
Look, I know a girl who played first grade for GWS. She's wonderful, but even she makes fun of the AFLW sometimes. But Kane
and it's not sexism, because we said the NRLW is good. It's not sexism.
But yeah, so because there's nothing to report and nothing to criticise in AFL, because he can't criticise the AFLW because it would highlight the fact that it's actually the AFL's fault how bad it is. Kane Cornes has stepped into cricket. And,
so Kane Cornes doing the AFL's bidding again, taking the heat off the AFLW by laying into Steve Smith.
Yeah.
This came after, obviously Cornes had his eye on Steve Smith in New South Wales Sheffield Shield loss to Victoria. Cornes was having a go at Steve Smith's continual refusal to accept dismissals. Read a quote here, Kane Cornes laying in, said Steve Smith set a shocking example. That was a quote from him. And he also said, there's some things that I've been very right on and things that I've been very wrong on in a media career.
Really?
But none of them is that... but one of them being right is that Steve Smith is just the most self-absorbed Australian athlete that we have. Kane Cornes says that Steve Smith is the most self-absorbed athlete that Australia has. Well, I'll tell you what some people say about Kane Cornes. I'll tell you what Luke Darcy, the Western Bulldogs legend, said about Kane Cornes. Luke Darcy said that Kane Cornes, said it to Cornes himself, said he was, quote, more mean-spirited and nasty to people than anyone in the history of our industry. That's a pretty big bake from one of your colleagues in the AFL media there. So look who's talking, Kane Cornes. Don't throw stones from a glass house, mate.
Yeah, cricketers all seem to have this air of arrogance around them, but I like the quote where it says, I've been right about some things and wrong about some things, but one thing I'm right about is Steve Smith is the most self-absorbed athlete in Australia. My brother in Christ, that is an opinion. An opinion is neither right or wrong. And just you saying before it that it's right doesn't make it right.
And, I mean, it's a load of nonsense as well. It's not accurate.
Have you met Nick Kyrgios?
Nick Kyrgios, hello. I think Nick Kyrgios is a lot more self-absorbed than Steve Smith. Nick Kyrgios is potting everyone on social media. I don't even think Steve Smith has social media, or if he does, he doesn't pot everybody on it.
Twitter.
He has it, but I mean, if he does, he doesn't use it. You never hear about him tweeting anything. So Nick Kyrgios, Bernard Tomic, Anthony Mundine, hello. There's a lot more self-absorbed Australian athletes than Steve Smith.
Exactly. Nothing that Kane Cornes says is really of note. I talked him up last year because he was the only person who wrote articles about AFL, but now, it's just becoming more and more evident. He's just like the mouthpiece of the AFL.
And he tore into the NRL. He called rugby league a shocking sport after the grand final. So, I mean,
We did have a comment, that was one of the snippets we posted, and we did have a comment where it said, the game wasn't that good for the AFL, there's no denying it, but you can't deny that the AFL entire event was way better than the NRL. And my response to that is, the game is actually the centerpiece of the event. So if you're sitting there and saying, yeah, but our entertainment was better, the game was worse. We had Katy Perry and that was better. You've already lost. They're going to bill the busker if the game is way better,
Now, I'll tell you what, I don't care what Kane Cornes thinks about cricket or the NRL. No, I really don't.
I barely care what he has to say about AFL because I know it's all just fed to him by the AFL. So
but he again, as you pointed out a while back, He's doing the bidding of the AFL PR machine. Criticism of the AFLW, all right, I'll attack a cricketer. Criticism of the AFL Grand Final, all right, I'll attack the NRL Grand Final.
Exactly. But in the Sheffield Shield, which is very important right now.
This was in the one-day cup.
Oh, the one-day cup.
Result, so an extraordinary result, if you can believe it. Western Australia were 2 for 52 against Tasmania and got bowled out for 53. They lost 8 for 1. What a staggering collapse. Can you believe it? Just extraordinary. It was the second lowest score in one-day cup history.
8 wickets for one run.
This is the thing. In the space of 28 legal deliveries, WA lost 8 wickets and registered just 1 run. And the run, it was a wide too. It wasn't even a real run.
You got to think like that's just eating away at them. Like every person coming in, like, please don't be me. Please, I have to get the runs. I have to get some runs. Oh God, I'm out. Oh God. Oh no. And then the next guy is like even worse. Now there's 3 of us. Oh God. Oh God. Now there's 4.
Yeah, so if you can believe it, Cooper Connolly, Hilton Cartwright, Ashton Agar, Jai Richardson and Joel Paris all got out for ducks in the innings. So it was a monumental collapse by Western Australia there against Tasmania in that one-day cup. Quite extraordinary. The only lower score was South Australia against Tasmania back in 2003. That was 51. So just terrible. But I've never seen that in my... I've been watching cricket for 30 years. I've never seen a team lose 8-1 at any level. That's extraordinary.
No, that's ridiculous. Yeah, like how... Seriously, like imagine being just as you're progressing through that, you're just praying that the guy in front of you actually gets a run. And then they don't, and then you have to go out there and be like, God, I hope I'm not... Can't it please let me be the one who gets a run? And just the last guy, like, oh, this is going to be bad.
Yeah, it's just... You just never see that. Normally you see some... Even if you see a collapse, you see 2 of them put together some sort of a partnership. To go 2 for 52 to all out for 53, that's just disgraceful.
That's bad.
Yeah.
And you know, we touched on it before.
Yes.
New Zealand has managed to beat India in India.
Yes.
Every Indian cricket fan that I know is being very quiet right now. There is a lot going on in the world of cricket as well when it comes to this. But yeah, they basically smashed them.
Yeah, it's the first Test series that New Zealand have won in India. So a historic win for them. They're 2-0 up in the 3 Test series, so that's going to be really weird seeing India play that 3rd Test having lost the series at home. That's just such rare air for them.
Yeah.
It's the first time India's lost a Test series at home since December 2012. That was when England, unfortunately, beat them 2-1. I'm sorry to say.
It was also bizarre that England can win, but that was back when England was able to win.
Yeah, Mitchell Santner, he had a very good Test match. 7 for 53 in the first innings there for Santner. That's really set up that win. Before Saturday, a visiting New Zealand team had never won a Test series in India, dating back to their first trip in 1955. So, extraordinary result. And with that series defeat, India's record of 18 consecutive bilateral home series wins have come to an end. That's the longest such run for any team. So, yeah.
Bizarre.
Well done to New Zealand.
Good for us, because we don't have openers, but India can't even win in India.
That's the thing. I think going into this series, the only reason why I would say Australia are the favourites is because they're playing at home and India are horribly out of form. It's not because Australia is struggling with the bat, but you'd have to think that Australia's bowling attack in Australian conditions going up against an Indian team that's coming off a home series loss to New Zealand. I think you put all that together, I think you'd have to say Australia are favourites for that series now.
For sure. And in great, amazing news that we should all have a celebration for, another one of our favourite teams, England, has lost to Pakistan in the Test series over there.
Yeah, 100%. So it's the first time England have lost a 3-match Test series from being 1-0 up. So there you go. They led 1-0, and now Pakistan have come back to win that 3-Test series 2-1. And Pakistan, not only had they not won a home test, so back-to-back thrashings for England against a team who'd not won a home test, let alone a series, since early 2021. So that shows that that's a significant setback for England there, losing that series to Pakistan.
Who really cares, because it's England. And they can't win anything anyway. It's all because of that.
But that's the thing, you would have, because of Pakistan's struggles in Test cricket, you would have thought England were favoured going into that
if
series.
they were going to win against anyone, they should have won against Pakistan, and they didn't. Their entire cricket, they're just failing as a country in cricket right now.
And that 112 England made, that's the lowest total of the Bazball era too.
Time to end that buzzball era. On to other sports. And Yannick Sinner has... What did he win? What was it called? The 6-6...
The Six Kings Slam in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabia event where everyone got a bag of money.
$6 million for winning it. And Andy Roddick has had something to say about it.
Yeah. He said that he felt sick that Yannick Sinner earned more than 25% of his career prize money at the Six Kings Slam. Sinner collected $6 million for 3 days' work. Roddick made about $20 million in prize money during his 12-year professional career. Look, cry me a river, Andy. I mean, he's worth $40 million. He's done okay. I'm hardly sobbing in sympathy for Andy Roddick.
It's capitalism, right? That's how you keep score. Who has the most money? He felt sick because Yannick Sinner's going to beat him at capitalism.
Yeah. Like boo-hoo, go work a real job, Andy. Go work for 60 grand a year in an office job where you get flogged 45 hours a week and never get to see your kids.
Rod Laver doesn't complain about how much Yannick Sinner makes because Rod Laver understands that... Is Rod Laver still alive? He is, yeah? Yeah. He understands that money goes up. Prize money goes up. What Andy Roddick should feel sick about is if suddenly all the prize money started to go down because it would mean the collapsing of his sport. That's just the way it is. It shows the popularity. It shows that Saudi Arabians are now willing to use tennis for part of their money laundering exercises, allegedly.
And this is the thing. He's saying, he's got no interest in the event in Saudi Arabia, and it looked completely unnatural. Look, everybody's getting on their moral high horse about Saudi Arabia. It's very easy to get on your moral high horse when you're not being offered that money. Maybe if you were offered $6 million for 3 days of work, all of a sudden you might not get so moral high ground about it and might actually take the money.
All of them would go there, 100%. All of them.
It's easy to be moral high ground when when the offer's not put in front of you.
All of them would go there, every single one of them, except for the countries that are like, I'm sure if there was an Israeli tennis player that was offered $6 million, they wouldn't go. Like, that's about it. But everyone would go there. Everyone. It's nonsense. You can talk criticisms of Yannick Sinner the only bad thing Yannick Sinner's done as far as I'm concerned is he's a drug cheat. I don't care how much money he works. If he's able to do it, he's able to do it. And if the Saudis are able to offer it, they're able to offer it. Boxers aren't getting sick about Saudi Arabia paying Francis Ngannou $20 million in his first ever boxing match, Boxers are like, damn, I want to go to Saudi Arabia and get my bag.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the way it should be. And finishing up, just because we want to say the words Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and P. Diddy.
I thought you'd like me putting this one on the rundown.
Because if you can say P. Diddy as much as you can during the your podcast, you'll probably go up in the algo.
Yeah, this was about a little while ago, this one, but I thought I did go fishing for a Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce story. And this one's an interesting one. So, Antonio Brown, I think he's a recently retired NFL player. Maybe he's still playing. I don't think we really
retired,
care. Yeah, I think he is retired. So he's taken to social media and posted Taylor Swift's been dragged into this Diddy drama. And so he's posted a photo of Travis Kelce looking upset, this Antonio Brown. He's posted it on Twitter, and with the caption, "When you find out your girl was at Diddy house swimming in baby oil." So he's linked he's tied Travis Kelce up in this Taylor Swift Diddy situation. Recently, Taylor Swift said Diddy, a resurfaced interview from 2011 had Taylor Swift saying that Diddy would be one of her dream prom dates, and I mean, she's copping some heat for that, but she said it in her defense. She said it in 2011. He wasn't as tainted in 2011 like he is now. Well, what can you do about what you said 13 years ago when something's only come out in the last 12 months?
Yeah, people loved R. Kelly until R. Kelly finally got brought down.
You don't know someone's tainted until they're tainted, right?
If Taylor Swift was proven to be at P. Diddy's weird backroom parties, and then you resurface a clip from 10 years ago, you're like, well, but she's not part of it. And like, yeah, she's like the rest of us. All these people who are on their moral high horse about that are all the kind of people who still listen to R. Kelly on Spotify. They're this kind of people who demand that Joe Rogan and Donald Trump be taken off Spotify, but listen to what's that famous R. Kelly song? I Believe I Can Fly. Or Ignition. Ignition's the other one. They're still on Spotify. P. Diddy's still on Spotify. Instead of getting worked up about Taylor Swift saying something 12 years ago where all of you people loved P. Diddy, why don't you go and complain to Spotify and say, why is he still on Spotify? Because he's earning money all the time from Spotify. Yeah. And he's appearing in, like, on the Spotify radio stations, which are like auto plays, so people don't have to look them up, so he gets paid for that. I mean, it's not a massive amount of money, but per play, and it adds up. He's appearing in daily and weekly, monthly mixes and stuff like that for people. So randomly people are listening to P. Diddy. You listen to the song for 10 seconds before skipping it, and he gets like 0.0002 cents. You know? So instead of complaining about Taylor Swift, and I've said before, I don't like Taylor Swift. I think she's a sanctimonious blowhard. Don't tell that to a bunch of pre-teen jiu-jitsu girls, but just because she liked P. Diddy like everyone else in the world did until 2 months ago, doesn't mean she's a bad person. She's a bad person because she thinks she should do election interference. Yeah. That's why. She thinks it's her job to interfere in the election.
Unfortunately, when a scandal comes out about somebody in the last 6 months or so, unfortunately, you can't go back and unsay everything you've said about them previous to that.
Yeah, it's absolutely
It's not realistic. It's not possible.
It's such a stupid thing. And all these people are all invited to, like, those P. Diddy white parties that everyone complains about. Like, look at all the people that were at the white party. He invited, like, 5,000 people to them, and 5,000 people turned up. Like, literally 1,000 people. You got to worry about... Same with R. Kelly. Everyone complained about how much, like, everyone was like, so happy with R. Kelly and proud of R. Kelly and friends with R. Kelly. The people you got to worry about are the ones that actually covered up his like weirdness, grossness, sex trafficking. That's who you got to worry about, not the people that just went to a P. Diddy party. Yeah. Worry about the record companies that knew.
Yeah, how was Taylor Swift to know in 2011 about Diddy what we all know now about Diddy?
I'm sure she only knows now because it was in the news. Like, that's it. I mean, with stuff like that, like, there's some... Harvey Weinstein was a classic one. People have gone back and found certain snippets where other people said... Like, Courtney Love was very famous. Like, if she was asked, what advice would you give to a young aspiring actress in Hollywood? Courtney Love's Kurt Cobain's wife. And she said, never go into a hotel room with Harvey Weinstein. So people knew, but it was, unspoken about. And there's probably people who knew about P. Diddy, but it was unspoken about and career ruining, and also you never actually 100% confirmed it. You just heard rumblings of it, like P. Diddy has these baby oil parties. So yeah, I feel bad for people who try to target Taylor Swift for going to a P. Diddy party or talking about P. Diddy 10 years ago. Because man, when I was 15, I loved that song, Every Breath We Take cover. That was back when he was Puff Daddy, right? Yeah. So yeah, on your Taylor Swift.
He's in all sorts of trouble now.
Oh yeah. He's trying to get it all suppressed as well, so none of the information can be released because he knows what happened to R. Kelly.
I mean, I think he's in strife either way, isn't he? I think there's no coming back.
He doesn't want a documentary released. That's what I'm hoping. I don't really read the news on this stuff. I wait for the docu-series. Surviving R. Kelly is like one of my favourite docu-series ever. It's like super disturbing. I love the cult stuff. But yeah, like I'm so pumped for a P. Diddy docu-series. But that's the thing. He's trying to get all the information suppressed so no one will be able to make a docu-series. Because then everybody will know. But he'll still be on Spotify. So go out and protest that, people. NFL player, idiot man. Alright. That's it for the week. I reckon next week we're going to have heaps of signing news. We're going to know who's in the Pacific Bowl relegation thingy. We're going to know who's in the Pacific Cup final. We're going to know more about Dave Warner. And yeah, it's going to be fun.
And we might talk about the US election a bit too.
Oh yeah, most assuredly. I'm so pumped for that. That's the greatest sporting event in the history of the world.
There's odds on it, so yeah.
So thanks, man, and I'll see you next week. And bye, everybody.
Thanks, John.